The Jews around most of the world have been living in a cozy bubble since World War II, really. Our parents grew up reasonably safe, but also haunted by the stories from their parents, living as Jews in Europe and Russia, the Middle East, most of the world. I think we all know what life was like for them. It was certainly easier living as Jews in North America. However, let's not forget that Jewish people were never afforded the same privileges as white Americans or white Canadians. In fact, here in Canada, until 1969, there was a quota. I don't know if you knew this. There was a quota on how many Jews were allowed to study medicine at McGill. The St. Louis Hospital in Montreal, Jews weren't allowed. Sorry, you can't eat here. That's, by the way, having it easy. My generation, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, well, we've enjoyed what I call the golden years. I grew up in Thornhill, went to Thornhill Secondary School in Vaughan. Lots of Jews, lots of non-Jews. Everybody got along perfectly. Nobody cared. We never really talked about that kind of thing. I don't recall anyone in my school alluding to any form of hate towards the Zionist state of Israel and the Jewish people. It just wasn't something people really talked about. It was just, we were all kind of here. So I think I got into one fight with some Catholic kids when they said something not very nice. I think it's really today, it's our lack of experiencing deep, vile hatred, that we see today that's given us this false sense of, security. Well, things have changed. Today it's open season on the Jewish people all around the world. Canada's no different than France, Ireland, England. Verbal attacks have become physical attacks. Acceptable social norms to hate Zionists, well, that's formed into a new acceptable social norm to hate the Jews. And it didn't take very long, did it? Maybe 5 years, 6 years. We're now seen as white supremacists, European oppressors, colonizing fascists, and even Nazis. Imagine trying to convince Nazi Germany that we're also Nazis, we're just like you. We're part of the Aryan race, look. Well, the Islamist, Marxist, communist, progressive left of today are a replica of the Nazis of yesteryear. The irony of calling themselves Antifa escapes them completely, as Antifa is short for anti-fascist, right? With just a quick change in their brand name from Antifa to pro-Palestinian. And here we are. Every Jew I know in Toronto is having the same conversation. I know all of you guys are too. Should we move to Florida? Maybe Texas? We should be going to Israel, but what are we going to do there? It's so expensive. I wonder if our people had the same attitude in the 1930s when Hitler came to power. I wonder if some Jews were like, it's fine, it'll pass, and if others were like, this Hitler guy is a little unhinged. Let's move to Florida or Texas. There were 500,000 Jews living in Germany as Hitler rose to power. Most Jews voted for Hitler because everybody was voting for Hitler. Why stick out as the unpopular people in political stance? Every one of us has heard what we are seeing today is exactly like it happened in the 1930s. We're saying it, we're hearing it. Everybody here, there's not one person here who hasn't heard somebody else say, this is just like the 1930s. Some think it'll pass. The problem now is our reaction is exactly the same as it was back then. So many Jews still vote and defend the politicians who hate us. We kiss their asses for saying something nice about our people a week after they spat in our face. The attitudes by so many of the political shills in our own community is that we should praise them when they do good. So maybe they'll stand up with us again in the future, maybe, possibly, I hope. Really? How ignorant, deficient, and dense do you have to be to think this way? Begging for acceptance from these politicians, thanking them for not spitting on us this time? Somehow that's going to encourage them to change. It's the opposite. They know that they can slap us, they can spit on us, they can kick us, and we'll still come back for more because we forgive everyone, always. And like a dog begging for attention, actually reminds me of a funny joke. And it goes like this: a dog will always love you more than your wife. If you want proof, lock them both in a closet for 2 hours and see how they react when they get out. It takes a second, look at it. Our community is like the dog in this joke. We're overjoyed when we are let out of the closet after 2 hours. So when are we going to fight back? We fight with each other about the best way to fight back. We even fight about fighting back, but we don't actually fight back. There are 200,000 Jews in Toronto alone. Our rallies and protest numbers peak at around 4,000, with exception for yesterday, which was just the best, right? But normally, we see 4,000 people come to a rally, we're like, wow, this is pretty good. 4,000 Jews, that's about 2% of the population of Jews in Toronto. 2%. 4,000 people is 2%. Imagine if it was 20%. Imagine if 1 in 5 of our Jewish friends and family members came out to the rallies to support those who are being mistreated. 1 out of 5. So we would have 40,000 people on the streets. Can you imagine this walk from yesterday at every rally to show them that we're not taking your shit anymore. We're done with this. Get out of our face. That's what we need to tell them. Imagine what it would do to the enemies. It would be like popping a pin in a balloon. You know, they just deflate and feel stupid as they are. And we complain. That's what we do. We hide and we complain. We complain to each other. We don't even complain to people who aren't Jewish. We don't want to upset anyone. And that is how we view as doing something. We hear about anti-Semitic incidents against a kid in North York and we say, oh, that's terrible. And we continue about our day. But God forbid if your kid was a victim of anti-Semitism. You'll scream from the rooftops. You'll post on every WhatsApp chat, Facebook page, everywhere and anyone for the anguish your child has suffered. Why aren't you doing the same thing when it's the child that isn't your child and that's the victim? Why are we not all standing together when any of our children are attacked? We don't have to say, oh, it's too bad. We need to stand up and do something. For those who know me or my organization, one of the paramount initiatives really for us has been working with other communities to build the bridges. So we're not alone, you know? We're working very closely with the Iranian community, the Hindu community, the Christians, the Venezuelan community now, Chinese, Filipino communities, just to get us all to stand together and support one another. They walk with us, we walk with them. But tell me something. If Jews aren't even willing to walk with ourselves, how are we going to get us to walk with them? How can we expect them to say, we'll stand with you, when you don't stand with yourself? This is a big problem we have. If we don't stand up to hate against Jews, we're certainly not going to stand up for hate against the Hindu community who's been targeted, the silent racism, as I call it. Most of us don't even know about it. It doesn't get reported. Temples being desecrated, being vandalized, people being hurt. We don't even hear about it. The news, Hindus aren't important enough for them to report. The Jews, we're loud at least. We complain a lot, so fine, we'll report about that. This is a big problem. We are our own worst enemies at times. But there is hope. There's hope because we're smart. We're very smart. We're also the most resilient people to ever walk the earth. We must demand support from our own community. We can't allow for families, friends, and coworkers and pickleball teammates and cottage buddies to remain silent and sit on the sidelines at home because they're tired or they're bored. Each of us must commit here every single time to get a Jewish friend or a Jewish family member to just come out, support. If we can do that every time, things will change for us here. I promise you that.